Hello, my name is Kay Waller, and I am reflecting on my time in HCDE 313, Introduction to User Research. My research this quarter examined how to encourage students to make healthy eating choices at Local Point Dining Hall on the University of Washington campus. To answer this question, I conducted observations, interviews, and surveys. I began by conducting 3 observation sessions at various locations around Local Point. I observed people's actions, how they were interacting with the built environment, each other, and their food. I analyzed this data qualitatively by way of affinity diagrams, distilling the largest themes into 3 results. I observed that ineffective menu screen communication was the largest barrier to encouraging healthy eating choices due to screen imbalances and irrelevant content. I learned that field study observations are best carried out when you are trying to gain context for an inquiry, not for specifics. I had no prior knowledge about my research topic, and conducting observations helped me get my head around the basic interactions of Local Point. I also learned that it is easy to get overwhelmed with the number of things happening, so reminding yourself the scope of the design question periodically is important. I believe a strength of field studies are their ability to provide quick context for a design question. They are also useful in understanding behavior, particularly frequency of behavior, such as if you see multiple people doing the same action. For better or for worse, field studies provide breadth and not depth. For this reason, I believe a weakness of field studies is their inability to convey the reasoning behind an individual's actions. I periodically found myself frustrated because I would view an interesting action and would want to ask them why they did that action. I also believe the data is difficult to analyze because of the sheer volume of observations. Overall, I enjoy conducting the field studies because some individuals do really funny things. However, I found taking notes during the observations tiring, and I found data analysis a bit overwhelming and tedious. However, it was my first exposure to user research, so I think that is to be expected. I took the ineffective menu screen communication result into my interviews and examined how students chose what food they were going to eat. The themes derived from quantitative data analysis revealed that the familiarity level of a food was important. I was particularly curious about this result because it seemed to hint at the fundamental reasons students seem to avoid the healthier options at Local Point. I learned that interviews are much harder than they appear, especially follow-up questions. Despite my best efforts not to, I asked at least one leading question per interview. Going forward, I would like to improve upon that. I also learned that transcribing the interviews takes forever, so in the future, if I continue to conduct interviews, I would like to invest in a transcription tool. I believe that a weakness of interviews is the time commitment on the side of the researcher. Both interviewing and transcription takes a large amount of time. I also believe that interviews with as small as a sample size of 3 are not the most valuable in providing meaningful results. A strength of interviews is their ability to get at the why. I was able to understand much more about students' motivations and feelings, and I found that my interview data was much richer than purely observational behaviors. Another strength of interviews is the ability to develop personal relationships with participants. I found interviews quite exhausting and stressful, as this method demanded much more from the researcher. Follow-up questions were difficult to come up with, and I felt frustrated that I occasionally asked leading questions. However, I felt that the data came from it was much richer, and I was more confident in my interview results than in my field study results. I chose to focus on familiarity and comfort for my survey. Thus, I examined what makes the food comfortable, what vendors are familiar, and how to make the foods at Taro and the Salad Bar fit a student's definition of a healthy meal. My most salient result was the importance of protein, as the pattern showed up across multiple questions in my quantitative data analysis. I learned that recruiting participants is a lot harder than it seems. If individuals aren't passionate about a topic, they are less likely to respond, and I believe that's why I had trouble. I also learned that the wording of questions is crucial, and words and phrases that make sense to me don't necessarily make sense to other people. I believe a weakness of surveys is that the respondent's answer is disconnected from their story. Respondents are forced to choose preset options, and the unique story of the respondents or the why behind their answer is hidden. Another weakness can be the phrasing of the questions. If you phrase a question incorrectly and don't think about the analysis beforehand, data analysis and cross-question comparisons can be tricky. Overall, surveys were both my least favorite and favorite part of the quarter. I struggled to find participants, and I had to go personally recruit respondents by going to Local Point on a Sunday night. However, I love the quantitative data analysis. Numbers make sense to me, and I found combining questions in unique ways enjoyable. This quarter helped me realize the importance of user research. Thinking back, I could have never guessed my results. If I can't guess correctly why people don't eat healthy foods, then I definitely can't guess correctly what features a product needs. Even if I don't continue with user research, I believe I came away from this class with a respect and an understanding of its importance. Throughout this quarter, I believe I learned more about myself and where my niche is in HCDE. I was not particularly inspired by field studies and interviews. However, when it came to surveys and the presentation, I almost enjoyed it. Analyzing quantitative data was enjoyable to me, and finding meaningful patterns came easily. Since I found that field studies and interviews aren't my bread and butter, I believe my niche in HCDE falls more on the design side. However, this class helped me discover skills I didn't know I had in relation to analyzing numerical data and finding patterns across questions. I am grateful for this discovery as it provides another layer of depth to my professional skill set. Overall, I felt the content in this class was valuable, although difficult. Because of this class, I feel much more empowered. I feel confident that I can competently design a question, make a plan, and successfully conduct the study and analyze the data. I feel like I have agency when it relates to investigating questions I'm curious about. Along these lines, for my environmental studies class, I conducted a research study. I drafted research questions, designed a plan, conducted 30-minute observations, and 10 blitz interviews. I felt empowered that I was able to investigate an area and question I was passionate about.